So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast, and we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Wally Schwartz. Welcome, Wally.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm super excited to have you on.
Although I wish I was there physically in Phoenix rather than here in Chicago. It's 20-some degrees here, and there's light snow right now.
Yeah, January in Chicago is not the most favorable place.
No, but I'll work on that.
You know, it's funny. I tell people I'd rather be, having grown up in San Diego, I'm a pretty fair weather climate guy, but I'd rather be in Phoenix in July than Chicago in January. So
no, I hear you. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, I'm super excited to have Wally on. So Wally and I have met off and on, for the last few years, especially with CBUSA, and I want to get into this because what's really neat. So Wally has extensive experience. He's been at Kohler substantial amount of years. We won't tell anyone how long. But formerly, you were the director of sales for the Builder Channel, which Correct. We're going to dive into because it's amazing what you've done there. But also, right now, you're serving as a consultant and brand ambassador for Kohler.
Right,
which
is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Wally, it's amazing because, with Kohler, these last 4 or 5 years, I've been able to spend a lot of time with a lot of members and employees all throughout Kohler, in all different facets and organizations. And what's amazing to me is the company culture, and not only that, what they say about you, Wally, and the reputation you have there. And to get started before diving into the Kohler side, you have extensive experience, working with people, building teams, working with builders. What do you feel sets the tone for good company culture?
Well, I think it starts with, you want to encourage the investment in your associates' growth. So I think that's very important. I think you need to recognize and applaud good work, innovation, engagement is important. I think it also has helped that Kohler has had a consistent record of success, so that certainly helps the culture. And I think, the company at Kohler, and I think it's important in any company, you want an atmosphere and a spirit of collaboration. And I've certainly experienced all of that and then some with my career with Kohler Company.
Well, it's interesting. You said something right there. You said what's really important is especially I think from the manager role, is really investing in the growth of your team. And I've never heard it said that way for a company culture, which there are some bases, some basic things that employees need, right, to be driven. And they need to feel that what they're doing is providing worth to the company, right, and to the brand. They're compensated. I mean, these are important things, but investment in growth, it really shows that if you really care about the growth of your team members, which you've done that, and I know a lot of team members that have been under your management now have exceeded and grown into other roles there at Kohler.
Right. So, again, it's making sure that the employee stays engaged and that you're communicating, with them constantly. I think, communication is something we take for granted, and listening is something that I've taken for granted to some degree, and I'm constantly working on that, be it with an employee or a former employee, or be it with a family member. But I think listening is really key as well. And, there's also little things that you can do, in terms of increasing engagement and also helping with the culture. And, they're kind of common sense things, Brad. I don't like to make things terribly complicated. I don't think I'm a complicated guy. I've actually been involved in a very complicated world, particularly with the world of national builders, and we will talk about that, I'm sure, later. But, I like to think, I like to keep things fairly simple. And, it's as simple as picking up the telephone or the cell phone on an occasional basis and talking to your associate or talking to an industry person, maintaining that consistent contact, and making sure that it's authentic as well. And, there were other little things that I did, and I actually still do. I think there's a lost art in sending a handwritten note to people. I mean, certainly Kohler has spot bonuses. I mean, we would do that occasionally for a job well done. You'd give a spot bonus to somebody, and I never overused that either. And my former direct reports will tell you that. But, I think that a handwritten note, sincere note, goes a long way also. And I've had people tell me that. I mean, they'll get my thank you note for doing a job well done, and then I'll get a thank you call as a result of that. And, that's not the purpose. But that has a big impact. And, every once in a while you'd have a gift certificate or a gift card in there, but it was the note itself, the handwritten note, that meant the most. And I mean, I still utilize the United States Postal Service, and I'll still send, typed letters to people, on occasion. And I'm doing some of that obviously in my ambassador role, but, I'll get calls. It's like, wow, I just got a letter in the mail from you. And, sure, it's old fashioned, but I think some of those things, I mean, that's my nature, right? That's my personality. And some of that stuff I think goes a long way.
I love that you share this, Wally, because in my experience, especially in my company, there's been some certain experiences either with vendors, trade partners, suppliers, clients, that'll send a handwritten note for different reasons, right? And
Right.
It means so much more, especially in this age of technology. And there's a lot of benefits to technology. And,
Absolutely.
I look back in construction, I'm like, I don't know how anyone ran a project with just a fax machine without cell phone numbers. But anyways, but with that the advancement of technology, there's a lost art in communication, as you mentioned. And one thing, I know some of us are busy, and it's funny because I'll send people voice text. That's one of my habits, is I'll send voice text a lot.
Yeah.
And I get a hard time. They're like, Brad, why do you always send me a voice text? But I found that a lot of times with text or email, things can get lost in translation. They can be miscommunication.
Absolutely.
Because you can't address the tone of the voice, the tone of the message, whether there's sarcasm involved or you're just happy. And so even with my team, I'll send that. If I don't, they're busy, maybe in a meeting. And so I love that you spoke about a handwritten note and a phone call and how long that can go.
Well, and those are so easy. And that's why, I mean, I look at my kids, right? And they text all the time. In fact, if you call them, they won't answer, but they'll send you a text immediately afterwards, right? And I think you lose something there. I mean, that connection loses its personality. And sometimes it's easy to hide behind text and emails versus, an actual live conversation.
So what do you feel, when you're looking at how to motivate employees, and you've had a lot of experience working at Kohler and worked on some amazing teams, outside of what you mentioned, just giving them, investing in them and their opportunity and growth, I would imagine as a manager, there are times where there may be conflict internally with certain employees or with teams, or maybe with some of your employees and the customer, the builder base you're working with. How do you address and manage that when there is conflict or maybe not the best communication internally?
Well, I think what you want to do is you want to make sure you're operating or you're approaching this from a position of trust where the employee or the other side or whatever that that they trust you. I think it's looking at it from both sides and understanding each person's point of view. And again, I think that goes back to what I mentioned earlier, is I think it's listening. And again, I mean, it sounds like, oh, geez, that's natural. Everybody can do it. But not everybody is a good listener. And again, listening, trust, I think, the opportunity for you to take ownership of the situation as well. The buck stops here. I think that has a lot to do with, with motivating and inspiring. It's really leading by example, and also it's offering to support that person, right? No matter what. I mean, you want to make sure that you're always behind your team and supporting them, but I think at the same time you want to give them as much leeway. I hope my former managers would say this, but I tended to not get involved unless it was absolutely critical. I wanted them to be able to resolve the situation, if at all possible. And if it wasn't possible, or if they asked for my help, I certainly was there to support them. But I think you need to give people as much leeway as possible, and again, maybe gently guide them from behind or from the side.
And when you say that, when you say gently guide them from behind or the side, I've heard a term many times in speaking with business owners such as yourself, Wally, where they're, shadow leadership, right? Where you're essentially allowing them to lead. I mean, you may be the leader behind the scenes, but you're in their shadow, right? And so
right.
You're not taking it from them and you're finding a way to empower them and motivate them. And that is a lost art. So many of us, and I relate it for me as a small business owner, it's really easy, to want to be involved in every detail. It's really easy to be a micromanager. And it took time to really understand, how do I allow each of my members to be successful and be empowered and not have to come to me? They can make the decision, let them know, hey, it's okay, make the decision.
Right.
We can correct it if something's wrong. But I found that by doing that, as you mentioned, the empowerment side and giving them that leeway to make those decisions, there comes a point where they flourish and where, here I am as the business owner and I'm like, wait, you resolved that? I didn't even know that was happening. Like, you took care of this.
Sure.
And you're off and running. And it's amazing to see once they step into that, that role.
But part of it, I would have to admit, is selfish motivation as well. You want great people, great managers that can do the work. And what that allowed me to do is it allowed me to concentrate on the most strategic relationships and also kind of expand my contacts above and beyond, our primary audience. And I think that's really critical with having good people. You entrust the business to them.
I love that you said that, because it's not that it's selfish, but you're looking at, a company. I mean, as a CEO, which you were, Wally, in your role, I mean, you're looking at, growth and systems and relationships. And so by having them empowered, where you're not having to be involved in every little aspect, they can go out and be successful. Now it gives you more ample space and time and opportunity to build these relationships and build this network and really grow, your portion of Kohler, right? And
Absolutely.
build the relationships.
Absolutely.
So, Wally, talk about this, because I know maybe before I'll get back to, just your experience with Kohler, because I want to dive into this. But when last time I was with you, we were having dinner, and you had mentioned, you had talked about, how the Builder program started. And this was many years ago. And I believe that you were essentially nominated in a way. So talk about how the Builder, the director of the Bills, that channel, how that started.
Well, if you go if I can take the liberty of going
Sure.
back, right? So let's go back to, this would be 1986. I was on the Sterling side of our business as manager of national accounts wholesale. So what I was doing in that role was calling on the large national wholesalers and, expanding our business with those people. And, during that time, there really was explosive growth within the building industry and with some of the top builders. They started consolidating and buying other builders, and we were watching this growth, and we were talking about it at a meeting, as I recall. And given my background in field sales, and I'll go way back to my initial days with Kohler in Pennsylvania, I was calling on wholesalers. That was our primary target. But I felt that if I spent my time at the wholesalers, they were really the facilitators. They weren't the creators of and no disrespect, they served a wonderful role. But I felt that I would add much more value if I could create the sale for them and then pull it through. So I ended up spending a lot of my time with builders, and I absolutely loved that. And I, proved that I was of more value to the wholesaler by creating that business and pulling it through. Plus, I was controlling my own destiny. I wasn't one of many products on a shelf. I was actually controlling that whole process.
So if I interrupt you, so just to understand that for listeners, so what was happening, and this is many years ago, of course, when this opened up, instead of going the wholesale route, you're meeting with the decision makers. You're meeting with the builder.
Yeah, the local merchant builder, right?
Yeah.
The Brads of the world. As a local sales rep, I was meeting with those folks and with plumbing contractors and architects, but really focusing on the builder because I've always been interested in residential architecture. I think I may have told you that, and without going into you don't have 3 hours for the story, but I mean I have a love for that. And at one point I thought I was going to be a residential architect, and then was like, this engineering stuff and all this other stuff is not for me. I thought, I can appreciate it, right?
Yeah.
So I do have an appreciation for that, and I have many books on residential architecture, and it's still a hobby for me. But anyway, let's fast forward back to this meeting. So we were talking about the explosive growth of the builders, and talking about it, and I had done some work, in this position about the builder. And to make a long story short, I was at the right place and the right time, and I don't know whether it was so much being nominated as raising my hand first and then being nominated. And afterwards, it was kind of like, what have I gotten myself into? Think about it. We were starting a new sales organization. The sales organization wasn't selling direct to the builder. In fact, we weren't cutting a PO with Pulte or Toll Brothers or whatever, but we were trying to influence the sale and pull it back through. And I thought to myself, heck, I can do this. That's not going to be that difficult. But then, you look at the complexity, and a lot of these builders had multiple divisions, and the divisions were highly autonomous. And then you had plumbing contractors that influenced the sale. You had you had other people involved. It was a very complex selling process. And, calling on these large national builders, originally we focused on the top 25, Brad, but times each builder had multiple divisions. And, it was almost like, as my former boss likes to say, it was really like herding cats in the beginning. Right. And, but I enjoyed doing it. It certainly required a lot of time, effort, and travel. And, once we had that first success, then we had our second success, and, success breeds success. And we were able to hire additional people, and the work was difficult and arduous, but it was fun.
But how, the question I've always had about this is trying to understand, I think most companies, to be revolutionary, right, you have to think outside the box. You have to create, opportunity when there may not be any, right? And as you think about this, one of the difficult things I'd imagine from Kohler's side is, how do you track that? What metric do you have to know you're being successful, right? Because, this isn't, and for you, I look at it from your side, Wally, right. Here we are, okay, we understand that the point of sale is a distributor. It may be the plumbing contractor specifying, but either way, that's how you're basing sales, because you're not selling direct to the builder, to the plumber.
Right.
And where it's complicated for you is, it's not like today where I have LinkedIn, which is an instant cheat sheet. I can say, okay, Wally is, director of business sales, the builder channel. I can message him. I can connect with him. Right. I can build a rapport. You're trying, like you said, it's herding cats. You're trying to go to these builders, these big national builders that have multiple divisions. Who do I speak to? It's constant phone calls. Like, how did you even get your mind around, yeah, we've had our successes, but what did that even mean at the time?
Well, it was, that's a really good question. And really, it was a source of frustration, not only for myself, but I think for our senior leaders that wondered what the hell I was doing. And, but I mean, we did prove ourselves. And I think that, let's look at a big builder conversion. We converted a builder, and you'd notice, and it took time, right? I mean, the whole process took time, because you had to get everybody on board. The plumbing contractor had to be on board. The divisions had to be on board. There were so many parts, and our own people had to be on board. I mean, and the distributors. So every segment had to be, lockstep with one another. And I can remember going to meetings. I won't say the person's name, but it was one of our senior executives said, "Where the hell's a purchase order?" It's like, well, where's the beef? And so what we ended up doing is, over time, obviously, we'd get a conversion. We created some metrics and some processes to track that. And actually, typically, you'd write a quotation that distributors would release off of a quotation but it wasn't for every item. Obviously, it was for the high volume item, and we were able to track it there. And then we had monthly reports. And I mean, one of the reasons I probably built as many relationships and know so many people is, I mean, I would check these things because, my reputation was on the line. I was telling senior leaders at Kohler that we had converted a national builder that was going to generate $10 million of business a year, right? So my reputation was on the line. So we, over time, we developed more sophisticated methods and processes. And again, I would phone, every touch point that I could to make sure that the paperwork had been signed, that the distributor had placed the order, the plumbing contractor had placed the order. And, over time, that process becomes improved, right? And not as complex and complicated. So yeah, we did develop the systems and operating systems over time that helped tracking that. It's still not a perfect science. I mean, it's certainly better, Brad, but I think, my backfill, Brian Humphreys, who who's just an amazing leader, I think, we struggle a little bit with the same things, but it has gotten better. I mean, we have conversion reports, or I had conversion reports that were required on a monthly basis. And if it wasn't for our sales analyst, I don't know whether you've ever met her, Georgina Sluka, well, she goes by, but Georgina, who is really kind of the backbone of that. I mean, Georgina's full-time job was really tracking that business for us, and she did an outstanding job.
And she's
So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, but we did develop the policies, procedures, and systems over time. But it did take time.
Yeah, to me, it's a major undertaking. I know just in my experience, and of course, I'm only dating back to, my recent experience as a business owner, but the building industry is so fragmented, right? And
it is, yeah.
Social media has helped some ways, I think, connect some of us and figure out, try to be more unified in systems and understand products that's out there. But from your side, especially years ago, before all this technology and social media and information overload, if you will, from internet and YouTube, is although you're trying to commit builders, and plumbers, right, to say, okay, come use our product. It's one thing to have it specified, but they have to understand the training. They have to send them why. What's the benefit of this product? Why should I use this? How will this change my business? How will this eliminate warranty calls or service calls, by the performance? And so was there a service element or a training element that assisted you? Because there has to be that onboard side too, to really get people to commit and buy in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're blessed, and you know some of our marketing people, you're connected with them, but we're blessed with an outstanding marketing organization that really assisted us in putting together the tools and resources that were needed to train people, because I mean we couldn't have done it by ourselves. And I think really involving other segments of the business really boosts credibility or increases the credibility of the sales team as well. But I mean we did that, I mean, because we had on board the builder, and it's the purchasing people. That's the portal we normally go through. But then, you spread throughout the organization. Then it's like sales, construction, warranty, division people, division sales people. Then it's a plumbing contractor. I mean, nothing works, Brad, if it's forced. It just really, in the long run, is not a recipe for success. So I wanted to make certain that everybody along the way, right, everybody involved in the channel felt that they were sold rather than forced. And it worked best if we were able to do it that way. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it was really fragmented. But, Kohler, you've seen some of this and you've benefited from some of this as well. But I mean, the tools that they have available are amazing. But in many instances, some of these tools had to be customized for the individual builders based on product specification.
So how quickly did it evolve? I mean, how have you seen it evolve now, like to what the builder program is today as opposed to when you started it, years ago?
Well, some things have changed, right? And others haven't. I think the focus is still on the largest group, and just if you look at the large national builders, let's take a little bit of a step back. But when I started, the top 10 builders did about 5% of the house closings in the U.S. Today they do over 30%, right? So I mean, there's been that explosive growth, but yet there's all sorts of figures of the number of active builders in the United States. But I guess I would rely on the national home builder figures to be the most accurate. There's over 37,000 active NHB home builders, and they claim to build 80% of the homes in the U.S. So I mean, so you've got a really fragmented. You still have a fragmented business. I mean, there's been consolidation, right? The big have gotten bigger. Now they account for 30%, but yet, but that's happened really at the top. So anyway, it still is fragmented. Our business, has gone, from calling on the top 25 to really diving down to that, I would say 100. But in addition to that, it's also industry leaders. I mean, we want to make sure that above and beyond our local salespeople, and I believe that's still the most important link, right? But we want to make sure that there's additional touch points, be it marketing, be it IT. I mean, we've connected builders with all sorts of different links. But, so this is, I'm rambling here, and I knew this would happen at some point because I could talk forever about this. But the other thing that's changed is, so we're calling on a larger universe of builders. We also, a few years ago, added the multifamily segment to that, and we added additional resources, meaning human resources, to cover that market as well. So so those are some of the things that have changed, and I think you'll probably see considerable changes in the future as technology continues to advance. That's just going to happen.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I know part of our interaction, how you and I met, was through CBUSA, right? So CBUSA, right, which is acquired by Build-A-Trend, and we were together at the last conference in Colorado this past year. But the working with the national home builders is understanding. I look at Phoenix. Phoenix is a market that's dominated.
Huge.
It's dominated.
It's the largest. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's just it's unique. They own the land. They own everything, and so it's they have a huge pull in Arizona, right? And really dictate the market. It's not the case everywhere, but especially in Arizona. And so you look at CBUSA. What was part of the reason that you went down that road, Wally? Was this an opportunity where, okay, we understand the big players in the production industry, but now this is opportunity, again, getting back to the fragmented portion. We have a lot of semi-production, semi-custom, and custom builders. How can we mirror this and group these people together to now be part of the Kohler brand?
Well, what attracted me to CBUSA really was Bill Smithers. Bill is a tremendous individual. I had known him many, many years ago when he was a regional president division president at Ryland. We got to know one another, and then I followed Bill's career, and he organized this group. And he invited me out to one of their meetings, and I met these builders, and I thought, this is really a unique group of builders. And I thought, they're independent and they're smaller, but yet they're forward, thinking, and really they're, in many of their markets, they were the trendsetters, right? They were the ones that were, they'd build the 5, 10, 15 houses, and then the nationals would kind of copy some of the things that they were doing, they would extract the best. So really, I thought, number one, this is a group that's going to grow, and number two, it's a group that we, not only I, but we, meaning Kohler Company, can learn from. So, we became associated with CBUSA. I think the smartest decision I ever made, and I probably should have made it earlier, but is really treating CBUSA as a national builder account, because I think if you look at them collectively, what does it represent? I think it represents like the 6th largest home.
Yeah,
if you look
top
at
10 for sure.
In aggregate. So it's certainly a top 10 builder, and I just was always impressed with the way that they, it was totally transparent and sharing best practices and an interest in product, and an interest in marketing, and I just really, I still miss the frequent interaction with the group. It really was one of the highlights of my career. But it's also grown substantially. If I look, so that's, we track those sales with, again, Georgina helps, with the connection with CBUSA and has a program. But if you look at the growth of our business, Kohler's business with CBUSA, particularly over the past 2 or 3 years, it's been remarkable. It really has been. But from that, also a lot of individual relationships, right? And I think friendships have evolved from that. And that certainly has been, very, very rewarding.
I love that you shared the friendship part. I mean, I look back, I joined CBUSA a few years ago as well. And I had, had connections with Kohler. I'd been back, Houston that's there. And I met him and Darren, and because our local sales rep, who's Michelle Frey, I mean, she had me go back, and then I was able to meet with the social media team and, go back and see the back room of Kohler, which is pretty amazing. The brain there, which I know it's like proprietary, so I can't share, their back end stuff, but, Sanjay and everyone that's back there. But what's amazing about this, I remember early in my life, right, in high school when I ran cross country and track, and my coach said, Brad, you'll realize in life, it's not what you know, but who you know. And it's not that you miscommunicate or leverage these relationships in a bad way, but the reality is, I look at CBUSA and joining that group, Rod Collum, who's here in a big, he's really driven this program and been a great mentor for me, but the camaraderie, the understanding the systems, right? So being in this, you're networking with other professionals, you're understanding how they do business and how that's better my business. But then I look at the vendor side, and through that organization is now I meet Wally, right? I meet other people that in this day and age, and you talked about this earlier on in the conversation, it's not as stressful for you today being the brand ambassador, but the reality is
for me, it's less.
For you, it's less. But for me, I'm dealing with supply chain. I'm doing complication. And yet there's connections made at Kohler through these programs, some friendships, which now
that can help you.
They do help. And they've helped give me product. They've helped. I mean, Kohler, think $1 billion business that they're doing custom fixtures for, custom finishes for some of my clients. That's unique. That's not common from, a manufacturer, and to have those relationships. How long, this really has made a big impact on me, my business, and everything we're doing as a company.
But see, I don't think you need any of us anymore, because now you know David Kohler, right? So it's like Wally who?
No, I mean, fortunately, I was able to meet him, and when you had me out for the Ryder Cup, which is just an amazing experience. I mean, that was so fun. I mean, but everyone at Kohler, I mean, it's just such a unique company.
And I love the culture, and that's one of the things that's I love my job. I love the culture. I love Kohler Company, and this is not an advertorial for them. The work was, like I said earlier, the work was hard, but when you have a passion for something and when you really love something, it's a great feeling. But I would tell you that as we talked, you met David Kohler. I think he gave you his business card, and our other Kohler senior executives are the same way. If you really need help or you have a question, you can pick up the phone and call them. They're reachable. And I'm not suggesting you do that on a daily basis, but I mean, if you need help, they're there to help, and it's sincere. And I've always had a high regard and respect that the owners of the company are so accessible.
It is amazing because it's not like Kohler's a small company. I mean, this is a major, it's a major player in many other industries, even outside of the plumbing industry, right? Kohler has a footprint in many different aspects.
Absolutely.
So what has been your favorite part about working for Kohler? I mean, if you don't mind me asking, Wally, how many years have you spent there? Because what's amazing to me is, Brian, Georgina, I mean, everyone I've met, I mean, they've been there, they don't leave. Like, there's a reason they don't leave Kohler.
Well, and I think the culture is a big part of it, but I was associate my years of service, 42, with Kohler Company.
So rare.
And it is rare. And I look at my own kids, and they've gone up the ladder perhaps faster, but so what? They've also changed jobs. Each one of them has changed jobs a number of times. But I think what I know that I've liked best about Kohler is really the people. I mean, and again, you've had the opportunity to meet a number of Kohler people, be they in sales or marketing or executive, or from the social media marketing communication side. It's just a passionate, dedicated, talented, smart group of people. I mean, they made me look good. And, it also helps that, it's a fun group of people. It's really been a wonderful place for me to to grow my career. And so that's been the best part of it. I would say the other thing is the actual work, the work that I did. And as I mentioned earlier, when I think about having a passion for architecture, residential architecture, not commercial, and when I think about, as a kid wanting to having an interest in home building and those products, and I think about my interest all my life in, leading a team. And, I had the opportunity to do that at Kohler. And look, there was a lot of luck involved, but I was a lucky guy. I mean, I really feel, that luck had a little bit to do with that. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that.
It's interesting, I've given a lot of thought to the term luck because I consider the same. I look at my career path and relationships in certain contexts, and there's a lot of luck involved. But, especially as I meet people such as yourself, Wally, that have had such a successful career, I mean, there is something to be said that by working hard, doing the right thing, communicating, right, building a team, building a network, I mean, essentially you're creating your own luck, right? I mean, you've put yourself in a position where by being where you're supposed to be, by doing what you're supposed to be doing, learning to empower, I mean, it's going to create that own luck and create those opportunities that maybe would not have shown themselves, had you not been doing what you should be doing.
Right. Agree.
And let me ask this, Wally, because especially going back to the builder side, this is a curious question for me because I look now, one thing that's really tough is we're growing our business, a small business owner. How do you increase sales? How do you figure out your marketing strategy? How am I, if I just email or phone call the top architecture firm or top design firm, rarely will I get a call back. Rarely will I get up the right channel or to make that right connection. How did you do this, especially early on where, like we said, here's a big national builder. How do we figure out the division? How do we get their ear? How do we get time? I mean, is there a secret to that success to really capture that audience?
Well, for me, it was building a network of industry friends, and that doesn't happen immediately. That happens over time. But, I think you have to recognize, your strengths and weaknesses. And it's like, geez, I don't have all the answers to all these things. Other people have been through some of these things. So over time, I developed a network of industry friends. And, I'll give you an example. So this goes back to, I think 2001, but through builder shows and stuff like that, we kept on running, and the same group kept on running into one another. Was the Anderson Window people, the DuPont Surfaces and Tyvek people, at the time GE Appliance, and so anyway, at one of the shows, we were having a drink, and somebody said, "Why don't we get together on a formalized basis just to talk about the industry?" And we thought that was a good idea to get us as sales and marketing leaders together, and we formed this group called the Manufacturers Brand Council. We actually had a charter, and it doesn't exist today because everybody ended up later going different directions and schedules got busy, but we still keep up with one another. But anyway, what we were able to do is we would meet formally definitely once, and sometimes twice a year. And we'd share, like you do with CBUSA, in groups, we'd share best practices. And we signed NDAs. And these obviously are non-competing, right, people? But we talked openly about the industry and what the opportunities were and what the problems were, where we could help one another. And so at the end of the day, Brad, I would tell you, it was really, it turned into friends helping friends. And all of a sudden I get stuck. Let's say that I had a personality conflict with a top official at a national builder. I'd call one of these people up and say, "Hey, how were you able to get through to this person?" And, really, these were very important relationships. And we still keep up, we get Christmas cards and we remember birthdays and stuff. But I think it's having that lifeline. And, for me, I learned a lot more about the industry. It just wasn't from Kohler's perspective, but it was a broader perspective. And I think that, helped me. There's no doubt that it helped me. And I think it made me more valuable to Kohler, and I think it made me more valuable to my team members. And that's something that, that I hope I taught them as well, that, you need to expand your horizons. You need to see what the entire, and again, I think that's the reason for being interested, not just only in what national builders are doing, but all builders. I mean, it just broadens your perspective on things.
That's absolutely genius. I mean, you think about broadening your horizons, and I never have heard a vendor or manufacturer speak about this, Wally, where you're looking at this, okay, well, how do we bridge that connection? Well, let's work with some other national brands. They're not direct competitors of Kohler, but they're people that have had breakthroughs in the industry. They have relationships. And I look at that from my side, one of the, again, going back to Rod Collin, which I'll give a plug here, he pulled me aside, and this was at the Builder Show in Orlando many years ago. I mean, this had to have been 4 or 5 years ago, and he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, Brad, the biggest benefit, the biggest thing I ever did in my career was join a Builder 20 program," right? And he was part of Magleby in Utah and some other great builders. And he said, Brad, it's similar to you, Wally, where you're signing NDAs, you're expanding your market. And what's unique is that we're all trying, there's enough work, right? A lot of us have the mentality of abundance, but it's like, okay, how do we build these connections and relationships? How do we refine our business, which will then be value to someone that we're selling to? And so by doing that, you have this network of people. And I look at that, I look at my competitors, essentially, I mean, I'm not direct competing, but competitors to some extent that are now giving me information, maybe relationships. I look at my local market, hey, Wally, who are you using as a great interior designer? Who's been a great architect? What's their process? What are some of the great subs or trade partners that you're using? And I reach out to a lot of my peers, and most of us don't compete. I mean, maybe a little bit, but that opens up new channels, as you're mentioning.
Well, and think of the time and effort that saves you rather than having to do all that research, right? And start from the very beginning. Here you have testimony from leaders, whether they're local market leaders or whether they're large national leaders, but you've got that testimony. And we helped one another, and we actually helped one another convert builders as well. So, I mean, it just wasn't sharing marketing practices and processes and stuff, but we actually helped each other convert builders. And it was a lot of fun. I miss that.
I love the example you gave too, where it's, maybe you yourself was having a difficult time communicating with one of the executives at a builder. And so, hey, how did you find that secret to success? And, sometimes I don't jive with every personality I interact with or every designer or architect. And, what have other builders done to be successful? And it's just, it's a cheat sheet, right? I mean, it's just a way where we don't have to experience all the pitfalls ourselves. We have someone else that have been through those and can help guide us through.
But, what was surprising to me was that because we tried bringing in some other big brand name manufacturers, and what surprised me that there wasn't always a lot of interest. To me, it seemed something natural to do, right? But I guess it's because everybody's busy, right, doing their own thing and managing their own brand and stuff. But again, I just found great benefit and tremendous value from doing that.
Oh, it's such great insight. So, I mean, being at Kohler for 42 years, Wally, and I know you still are a brand ambassador involved to some extent as a consultant, how has the company changed? What have you seen some of the big changes that took place, in the last 40 years?
Well, Kohler's privately held, and they don't, publish their figures. But I can tell you, when I joined the company, I think we were doing like 350 million, and today, the company is doing in excess of $7.5 billion. My information may be just a little bit dated, but I mean, so growth is certainly, it's just been amazing growth. So that's a big change. But, I would say that really the change that I've seen, so when I joined the company, there were 9 colors and 4 faucet finishes. And the bathroom, Kohler had embarked previously on this bold look of Kohler campaign and really took the bathroom out of the closet, so to speak. But it wasn't the fashion industry that it became and that it is today. So really, if I look at a couple areas, it's really the elevation of the kitchen and bath into the fashion industry. And I mean, I think even our competitors would admit that Kohler really has been the leader in doing that. So it's become as I would refer to it, it's become a home fashion industry. And today you may know this better than I do, but I mean, I think today there's 25 colors, and then there's like special colors, and there's artist edition finishes, and then rather than 4 faucet finishes, now you've got, I believe there's 17 finishes. So I mean, just the choice that the consumer has, and the design and style, and it's not just at the upper end. I think, Kohler's acquisition of Sterling back in the 80s was brilliant. I mean, you've got a portfolio of product, and I'll speak specifically to the builder, that spans everything from entry level all the way through, through the highest end custom. So, I mean, that's been a huge change, the bathroom and the evolution of the bathroom and the kitchen. And I mean, let's face it, kitchens and master baths sell houses, right? That has not changed, and Kohler certainly has recognized that. I think the other area really of change has been on water conservation and sustainability. Technology is another area, but I mean, if you look at water saving and sustainability, I mean, the Kohlers have been good stewards of the environment well before the word sustainability, became in vogue. And I look at, toilets, for example. When I joined the company, the industry was, they were 5 to 6 gallon flush toilets, in some instances more. And then Kohler came out with a 3.5 gallon, and today it's 1.6 or 1.25, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, just think of, and that's the largest water consuming appliance in the house. And think of that. And Kohler's led with technology and making sure that the products, that they're not sacrificing style and performance. The same thing's true on the faucet side of the business with water savings. But I would say, the movement toward sustainability, water conservation, and just the overall green movement has been a major change at Kohler. And I think the Kohlers, they're doing it because they want the world to be a better place, and that's the approach that they've taken to this.
I love that, and we'll come back to the fashion industry comment, which I think is a fascinating. We can go down that road for a while, but going to the sustainability, there has to be a commitment, not just something we're doing for PR, to market, but the reality is to really feel passionate about it. And I know, like your Ansax line, right? You go in and you have a whole product of tile now, right? That is from ceramic and other products that are essentially waste. You're like, okay, well, how do we reuse this and optimize this? And then, the water saving or, the self-cleaning toilets. I mean, there's just a lot of things that Kohler's been ahead of the curve, for sustainability, which, having that passion, again, it just gives much more, for someone such as myself as a builder or product that we're putting in the market, that's something we're conscious of and our clients are conscious of. And so having a brand that is on board with that, I mean, it makes a huge difference.
Well, and they've really led the way. And I go back to really the roots of Kohler, cast iron plumbing products, cast iron bathtubs. I mean, and the recyclable nature of that product. It really is pretty amazing, the commitment that the company has made to sustainability and the resources. I mean, that's one thing that they've, there aren't, a few people involved in this from an engineering product design. There's a large group of people that are behind this effort internationally with Kohler Company.
Yeah, I love that. And then going to the fashion side, I mean, it's funny, we here in Arizona, we don't have the historic homes like you'd see in the Northeast that have been around hundreds of years, but even homes that were built, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in our market, right? You walk in and you'll have the kitchen like right at the front door and it's small and not open, and then this weird master or primary bathroom. And so it's amazing how now, as you mentioned, technology, Kohler's got into just that whole bathroom experience. You wake up, how do you start your day, with, in our house, we have the Moxie shower, which is awesome, the speaker shower. And then
Yep.
you have, the lighted mirrors and, all the different technology where you can speak to it and the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth, and how that whole experience changed from that spa-like mentality, the digital shower that you're waking up. And, it's amazing how you use the term fashion, that you've really dictated a market for the customer base, whether it's Sterling, Kohler, Calissa, the different levels that they can customize and really, create that energy and that inspiration, to start your day each and every morning.
Right. Well, and what I started too, there really weren't any builder design centers. I mean, I'm trying to think of actual builders that I called on in the early years that had design centers, and really most builders relied on the plumbing wholesalers showroom. And typically those were by a plumbing counter, and they certainly weren't in what I would call retail friendly areas. But over the years, as the portfolio of products has increased, Kohler's commitment to design centers has increased as well. I mean, the Kohler store, the Kohler Signature store, the Kohler Experience stores. I mean, they've put a ton of financial and human resources to provide, a pleasant experience for you, the builder, and your customer, the home buyer, that you can go in to these things and select product and be inspired. It's a big business, and it didn't used to be a big business when I was around. Like I said, there just weren't a lot of choices. But I would look at it, and both of these builders are certainly in your market, but two national builders that I think do it well and have refined the process over the years. KB Home on the entry level to mid price point. I think they've done a very good job and tell an effective story in their design studios. And then at the higher end of the market, Toll Brothers. And they really, those two builders, again, different builders serving different markets, but they've committed a lot of resources, both financial and human resources, in the design center market. So I expect that would continue to grow.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've seen this evolve. A lot of times, I'm asked at different panels or networking events, how has the industry changed, especially since COVID, right? Through the pandemic. And, for me, with our client base, something I've always pushed is, our clients, that they understand, especially at the level that we're trying to achieve, that we need to have a great architect and a great designer, right? And the value for them, I mean, I look at our customers that understood good design and have good design. Here's a pandemic where a lot of people were locked in their home. They were working from home. They didn't have the ability to travel like before. And so as you look at that, mental health has become such an important conversation point. And so many people that we think are successful say, I struggle with mental health. I mean, from athletes to every industry. And you look at, having products, touchless faucets, when you're thinking about germs, thinking about, how does this design inspire me as I'm waking up every day in my home and I'm working from home and I'm stuck essentially. How do I feel? And there's no value you can put on that, right? There's no dollar. And so where you have someone such as Kohler that has these innovative products and the fashion, and then also the convenience and the sustainability, I mean, you put that together and it just creates an atmosphere that motivates you and really can help, especially, because who knows what may come in the future.
Well, I think that goes back to the culture that we talked about earlier. I think all of those are ingredients into, what makes Kohler different, right, from their competitors. And, talking about design centers, though, and you're probably more in tune with this stuff than I am, because I'm admittedly not the tech guy. But, I was reading something in one of the builder trade magazines, but about this augmented and virtual reality. And I mean, I can remember going into C. Rod Cullum, and he had me put on these classes, and it was, I was going through the house, right? The finished house, and just sitting there in a chair. And I mean, this augmented and virtual reality. And, I mentioned physical design centers, which Kohler is, committed to, and all the resources. But I mean, also these new technologies that they're committed to. And I think the pandemic has has really helped accelerated some of this as well. But I'm absolutely amazed that people are buying houses, selecting product, closing on the house without ever leaving their house. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And again, you know me, I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like to walk model homes.
Yeah.
I like to touch product. And I think there's still a group of people that want to do that. But, a lot of people are really busy, and particularly the younger folks, like my kids, they don't have a lot of time to do that, and they can make these decisions. They can buy cars online. So it's really pretty amazing when you look at the technology and how things have changed.
Well, to that point, I mean, I look through our design process, and yeah, I mean, the Matterport, right, where they can have essentially tour the home without being there, but you like the touch and feel. But I will say one of the benefits, like the VR you were talking about, or even our clients that are doing our architects that go through this experience where solstice, anything about Phoenix, it is so important to understand where that sun is, in the south and west in that summer.
Bring it here.
Yeah. I'm sure right now in Chicago, but from from June to about October, right? I mean, that is, we're conscious of where that sun's at, and especially in those afternoons, 4, 5, 6 p.m. And so the architects that understand that and can design the home, to have either cover or shade or, different things to keep the sun from penetrating. I mean, it's just so valuable to the customer base. But I want to be sensitive to your time, Wally. I know you're busy, but as we get close to the end here, I mean, what is something about Kohler that's always impressed you that maybe the public or we don't know?
Well, I don't think most people probably know that Kohler, as long as I can remember, for a very long time, has consistently reinvested 90% or more of its earnings into the company. And I think that's, really important when you think of, funding the growth of the company and expansion and so forth. And, really requires a lot of fiscal discipline. So, that's not shared. It's shared in some presentations, but it hasn't been shared a lot. I don't think I'm telling you a secret that I would get in trouble telling, but I mean, I've always been impressed with that the family has made that investment not only in Kohler, but it's in the industry, right? So I think that's one thing that comes to mind.
And I love that.
Did you know that? Did you know that?
I didn't, but I actually love that because you look at today, and it's I don't want to get off topic here, but you think about some of the benefits of capitalism, but one of the destructive elements of capitalism is greed, right? And if you're on a board that's strictly looking at bottom line and profits, right, you kind of miss the mark of what the goal of the company and the people that build that. And to have someone with the capacity and size of Kohler to consistently invest in the industry and themselves and in the family, and as well as, the employees and the product, I mean, it goes a long way, and it really shows why they have people such as yourself, Wally, that have had that amazing tenure there.
Well, and 4 generations of Kohler family members running the company, private ownership. And really the long-term view. The fact that they continue to make significant investments in the business. They certainly look at the bottom line, and that certainly is important. But again, they're willing to take some risks that perhaps other publicly held companies are not willing to make.
So what keeps you busy, Wally? I mean, as much as, I know now that you're,
There's a honeydew. I have to shovel snow this afternoon. So,
outside of the honeydews and the years you spent at Kohler, I mean, what's your outlet?
Well, part of the outlet, again, this consultant brand ambassador, it's not taking up a lot of time, but again, it's fun to be able to talk to you, right? This is more fun than I expected. I don't necessarily like being on camera, but it's fun to stay connected, and I've been able to do that with a number of industry friends as well as Brian Humphreys and some of the team. I don't bother them very often. I hope they'll tell you that, but we connect every once in a while to talk about things. So that's been fun. I have 4 children and 4 grandkids with a 5th on the way. So Most of them are in the Chicago area. One's up in Minneapolis. So the opportunity to spend time with family whenever we can, I really cherish that. I'm still working on that hole-in-one.
Me too.
I haven't gotten it yet, but I just absolutely love the game of golf, and my game needs a lot of improvement, but I'm addicted, and I just think it's wonderful. The other thing is in retirement, we've been able to spend more time up the lake, up in northern Minnesota at Upper Whitefish, and we never have been able to before. We'd go up there for a couple of weeks during the summer, but it's 9 hours from here. So now we can spend more time. We spent most of the summer up there, and cooking. So the pandemic has forced some new hobbies, and cooking. I'm actually finding that that's relaxing, and test my culinary work. But I think staying fit is the other one, and that's really more serious. So I'm 68, and it staying fit becomes harder as you get older. I work with a trainer. One of the gifts to myself is I work with a trainer once a week. I'll probably bump that up to twice. And Debbie and I get out. We had been getting out daily, but typically we get out, or I'll do the treadmill, but 5 miles briskly a day. So so I'm investing in that. And in retirement or semi-retirement, there's no lack of things to do. I was afraid of that in the beginning, but now it's doing things at my own pace, and that's really a great. That's the gift of retirement. It's not a bad thing.
Well, I love that, and I will commend you because you are very fit for 68. And I know at the Power 30 conferences for CBUSA, you're there working out early before we start, super early in the morning, and you don't miss that. And I know from
your buddy Rod Killam tried killing me on a hike going up the mountain. He's more fit than I am, and I think he may be a little bit younger, but anyway, yeah. So it's. And it's fitness is I'm not. I wouldn't say that I love exercise, but to get out for a brisk walk and stuff and get some fresh air is a good thing.
Well, there's some great hikes here. So once we can get you back, we'll have to take you around Arizona. And I will say it's closing. We won't let you away. For those that don't know, the CBUSA, we have a Power 30, and there's actually the Wally Award, and which is a tribute to your integrity and just the relationships you built in the industry, which is really amazing. And so, Wally, I think
highlight of my career, certainly.
It's amazing, and grateful to call you a friend and for having you make time today on the podcast. And so for those listening, website, social media, we'll get them tagged for Kohler. Anything else that we should tag or let our listeners know where to find you? They can find me on the telephone, right? So this is still the best way to reach me, and that's 847-609-9881. And the other way is, and I prefer a live conversation versus text. I mentioned that earlier. Or you can send me an email, and it's Walter.Schwartz. So I go by Wally, but it's Walter.Schwartz@Kohler.com or Schwartz1129@gmail.com. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I don't have not a lot of hashtags and not a lot of. If I'm on Facebook, it's only because the kids have posted something. And I don't know how the hell to get it off of there. But yeah, that's where you can reach me. Or you can reach me. I mean, if people are going to the Builder Show, right? I will be at the Builder Show in Orlando, February 8th through the 10th. And I believe the Kohler booth number is W1100, W11, 1100. Well, Wally, I can't wait to catch up with you. I'll be in Orlando. I'll be at the Builder Show, so plug for them there. And so I think I'm on a panel with Kohler, I think one of the days, so we'll catch up there again. And I can't thank you enough for making time today. Happy to.